We got this Morino Flail mower that is not quick hitch compatible. We're going to attempt to make it quick hitch compatible. The pins are a little bit too wide here, and like the width between the pins is too wide, and then I'm not sure how this lines up, so I'm going to take this frame off. We're going to put it over here on this quick hitch and see how it lines up. So to take this off, you got 3 rollers here. You got a nut in there and a bolt here, and then you can pull this pin out, slide the cylinder off. There's another one of the rollers right there, and right here, and then there's these 4 here, and then that allows this to come off. So I think what we can do is cut. This is bolted on here and has a flange back in here. You can kind of see, so I think we can unbolt this, trim it here, cut off the appropriate amount, trim it here, cut off the appropriate amount. There's a little spacer right here on both sides on this bar, and take those out, I think, and then cut this here and re-weld it. This can be adjusted, the cylinder here, so that if it's not centered isn't that big a deal, I don't feel like, but we'll find out. Okay, so that's in the quick hitch on that side. That's with the hitch all the way off. And this one, it just almost will fit, but it's just not quite there. So that side falls in. This one is just barely close. This is too high as well, but I think I have a way around that possibly. We have a, it's like an H-shaped kind of, or Y-shaped thing that hooks on here, and it'll hook on here too, so we're gonna try that. Okay, so I got this apart. This arm just comes off with 2 bolts attached here, these 2 bolts here, 3 bolts on the top. They'll hold this top bar across. These aren't spacers, it's a larger tube with an adapter, so we can just cut that to the length. I think we just need to cut a little bit off, but we'll mock it up here in a minute. So we mock this up out there on the quick hitch, and it looks like we need to take out a 1/2 inch off each side, here and here. We'll get this all apart, and then what I'll end up doing is taking 1 inch off of here, welding that back together. This is the center bar. So that cap, it's not actually a spacer, but it goes in the tubing to support the tubing. So I should be able to cut 1 inch off of this tubing and then weld it all back together. But I'm just using a bandsaw. I marked this with a square, cut down both sides of these, cut along the top of this. It's upside down, so it looks like the bottom, but I'll cut along that and then cut a 1/2 inch off. And I think that will work. I'll just be able to weld that back on, smooth those edges out, and I think that'll work good. So I made a jig for this after I cut 1 inch out of this top brace, and I made it 1 inch shorter than what I measured before. So before it was 25 and 3/16. I finished at 24 and 3/16. So that seems to line up. Now that I got that welded, I cut 1 inch out of here in case that varied. I did the same thing here. As I wrote down my before measurements. Before, from outside of flange to outside of flange, it was 26 and 3/4. And then if I measured to the outside of this channel, it was 27 and 9/16. So I got that cut apart. I'm going to use a piece of angle iron to keep it straight along here and clamp that to there. And then space it out and carefully weld it. Hopefully it doesn't bow very much or warp. So I'll do kind of stitch welds, do some tacks and then stitch welds to try to keep the heat out of it. I'll probably grind somewhat of a weld kit on here, chamfer this in the inside and outside. Try to help that out too. So I've learned a few things on this quick hitch. I did cut this down and repainted it, and then I cut the tube down here, bolted it back down, and then this is where I You can see the weld, kind of the grinding there. This is where I cut down this section. I got it back on here. It doesn't quite work with the quick hitch yet. The width's right, but this hook height up here is not quite right. So I cut these brackets here. We're gonna weld these on. So cut off back here, because it needed to be wider for the quick hitch here anyways. And then I was gonna weld these on to the side up here to get this hook lower. But I found out that the quick hitch, when it's in here and the PTO shaft run up to the tractor, it hits the quick hitch. So what I'm going to do now instead is leave this pin where it's at, and I back the quick hitch into it and hook the PTO up. These pins are too low for the quick hitch, but the PTO doesn't hit the quick hitch now. So what I'm going to do here is, I got these same thickness plates here, and I'll weld prep those, weld those on, and then we'll mark the hole. It's going to end up being right through the weld. We got a mag drill that we think we can drill through that, no problem with. But anyway, that's the part there. We'll weld that on, and I think this will work now. Everything else seemed to work with the quick hitch backed in here. Like I said, I couldn't pick it up on the bottom hooks because they were too low. But leaving this pin height the same here, and then I got this side cut. So I'll weld prep those, grind a chamfer in it, weld that up. I think with this angle that should be good and strong, and then like I said, those holes will be about here. And then what I'll do here, this still needs to be wider to fit in the quick hitch. So let me so I think what we'll do here is leave this slot in the same spot, but flip it this way. I might end up cutting the top of this off to match this profile. But if I leave these, if I cut it back, the existing bracket, cut it back here, so there's room to slide it over the quick hitch. And then line these up similar, mark it out, cut them off, and then weld that back on. Then this should be wide enough here. I got two of these brackets. I had them laser cut. From Send Cut Send is where I got them cut. They were like 25 a piece or 30 a piece, something like that. But then that'll also leave more here on the nose of this, right here, to not quite hit the quick hitch, and have more of a slot here for that. So I think that will work. But a little bit different plan than I had originally, but like I said, I think this should work. When I get these all weld prepped and on here, welded on, new holes drilled, I can verify that.